Hello everyone, welcome to my first video. I'm going to be doing a ranking on the top 10 defensive defensemen in the league entering the 2018-2019 season in my opinion. And this video and this channel is almost entirely based on analytics and numbers. So if you don't like that stuff, you better click away right now. It does involve some of the eye test, but primarily I use numbers and analytics. Just because that's what I like, and I think that's the way of the future. In the background, there's going to be some NHL 19 beta gameplay from some ones. So, how do I come up with the rankings? Well, there's certain criteria that I use, and I balance them all pretty differently, different weights based on what I think is more important. So just in no particular order, the first thing I look at is quality of competition that the defensemen faced during the 2017-2018 season. And I know in the analytics community, there's a lot going on, a lot of evidence being presented that quality of teammates is actually more important than quality of competition. But I still think that, given the numbers, that quality of competition does have a pretty large impact on results. So the second thing I look at is shot suppression, obviously. You don't want to be a defenseman that's bleeding shots when you're on the ice. If you're constantly playing your own end, I don't really consider you're a really good defensive defenseman. And the third thing I look at is zone denials per 60, breakups per 60, stuff like that, because I think one of the best forms of defense is essentially controlling the zone and controlling the blue line. I think is one of the most important things, and it's been shown that controlling the blue line and denying the blue line is one of the most effective ways of tilting the ice in your favor. So defensemen that can really step up at the blue line do a really good job of that. Well, more often than not, tilt the results in their favor. The fourth thing is zone starts. So essentially, zone starts don't mean too much. I know that most of the shifts start on the fly, so zone starts don't matter too much. However, I think that just based on perception, if you're really heavily sheltered and you have like 60% offensive zone starts and 40% defensive zone starts, I think that has something to say about your defensive ability, or at least your perceived defensive ability in terms of what the coach thinks about you. The next thing I look at is high danger chances. Against high danger chances per 60 is what I look at. And essentially, I believe the high danger chances are anything recorded in the home play area or anything in the slot are considered high danger chances or within that general vicinity. The sixth thing I look at is zone exits, and although this isn't a really strictly defensive thing, one of the things I hate about, or the perception of a defensive defenseman is just someone that plays really hard in their own end, hits hard, puts the puck off the glass. That's exactly the type of defenseman I really don't like. I want my defensemen to be really active, engaged, and exiting the zone with control, either through stretch passes or exiting the zone with control using their skating. The seventh thing I look at is the heat maps, which I'll talk about a little bit later, and I'll use a little bit in this video, but essentially where shots come from on the ice when you're in the defensive zone. I think that has a lot to do with how good of a defenseman you are. The last thing I use the eye test. So I watch a lot of hockey. I'm a huge hockey fan, so the eye test is obviously really important to me as well. However, I like to balance it with the numbers as much as possible. So some of the sources I use for my data. The first thing I use is Bill Como's skater rank on his public tableau. You can follow him on Twitter at Billis27. The second thing I look at is Corsica data, which I believe Bill pulls some of his data from. This from Corsica.hockey.com. That is a lot of the stats that he uses. The third thing I look at, especially for high danger chances against per 60, a lot of the per rate stats, naturalstattrick.com. The fourth thing I look at is CJ Turturro's A372 season player comparison tool on his public tableau, CJT Devil on Twitter. The fifth thing I look at, or where he sources his data from, I believe, is from Corey Schneider, who does some excellent work on zone entries and zone exits, and you can follow him on Twitter at Shutdown Line. And the last thing I look at is hockeyviz.com. At Ineffective Math on Twitter, and he does some excellent work on heat maps and shot location charts. So without further ado, let me get on to the ranking. So at number 10, I have Matt Niskanen. Matt Niskanen obviously has a reputation of being a really good defensive defenseman. He's used as the matchup defenseman by Washington, and I believe he played the majority of the season with Dmitry Orlov on the top line. And we really saw him being used really heavily against top competition. throughout the playoffs and throughout the regular season. So, as I said, he's used as a matchup defenseman versus Washington. Extremely high defensive zone start, 66% of his shifts are in the defensive zone. He's a decent shot suppressor, albeit not an elite one, especially compared to some of the other players on this list, which is why he's a little bit lower than a lot of the other players on this list, and that's why he barely gets into the top 10 for me. He's elite at denying possession entries allowed per 60 minutes, so that's something he really does well, and I think that's because he's a really good skater, has really good defensive IQ. It could be better on a percentage basis and breakups, however, he's pretty elite at exiting the zone with control, and he also gives up quite a bit high danger chances per 60, so I think that's something he has to improve on. Definitely could be better on a percentage basis, breakups, and allowing fewer high danger chances against per 60. But for the price, for the AAV that he's paid, being a right shot defenseman, he's definitely an amazing defenseman, and I would take him on my team in a second. So the next defenseman, number 9, is Josh Morrisey, and that might come up as a bit of a surprise to some of you because I remember as a prospect, he was really thought of as an offensive guy, more of an offensive puck-moving type defenseman, but I think he's an elite defensive defenseman for a variety of reasons. He plays on the top pair, or supposed top pair, with Jacob Trouba in Winnipeg. He's not a guy with a lot of experience, but Paul Maurice in Winnipeg uses matchups and chases matchups really hard, and he usually goes up against the top competition against Jacob Trouba. He's really good at suppressing shots, elite at breakups and zone denials, one of the best in the NHL. Also elite at exiting the zone with control on a percentage basis. However, we haven't really seen his offensive side grow, and sometimes the best form of defense is being really good offensively and spending a lot of time in the offensive zone. However, one of the things that really surprised me is that he's 8th in the NHL at high danger chances against per 60 minutes, so really good at guarding that home plate area, really good defensive IQ. Really high quality of teammates is something that I would potentially flag as a potential concern, as he is on the ice a lot with Trouba and guys like Ehlers and Laine, Scheifele, Wheeler. So he is really getting a lot of teammate support. So how much of that has to do with him, how much of that has to do with his teammates, but the results and the underlying numbers are extremely promising from what we've seen so far. So at number 8, I guess it could be another surprise, but Nate Schmidt, not really, I guess, because he did break onto the scene this season with the Las Vegas Golden Knights. Obviously, the first thing you think of when you think of Nate Schmidt is his elite skating ability, and we saw it throughout the playoffs. We saw it last year in the playoffs, especially. I believe when Carl Elsner went down against Toronto in the 2017 playoffs, we saw his skating really come into the picture and just showed how much talent this guy has. And I believe Washington tried to retain him, but eventually they couldn't. The price was too high from Vegas. So his elite skating allows him to play a really tight gap against some of the best players in the NHL, and that's something I get from just watching him. Not all players are as elite on their skates as Nate Schmidt. I'd say he's in the top 1% of skaters in the NHL, and playing a tight gap, especially playing a tight gap against top competition, can really frustrate opponents. I think that's what led to his success as a top pairing defenseman in the NHL this season. So he played in the 98th percentile of quality of competition this season and put up a positive penalty differential while being great at suppressing shots. And I think that really sums up what Nate Schmidt is and who he is. He drew a lot of holding and tripping penalties just from blowing by four checkers and them trying to hold him back, stuff like that, which is extremely impressive given he's in the 98th percentile of quality of competition. If you can put up a positive penalty differential and be good at suppressing shots, man, you're doing really well for yourself. And Vegas has got themselves a gem there. He needs to do a better job at defending the blue line. He's in the bottom 25th percentile of zone denials, but he's also great at exiting the zone. Obviously, using the skating, 21st, and he's also 21st in the NHL in high danger chances against per 60 minutes. So just watching him play the skating is really what makes a lot of defensive defensemen, in my opinion, great, is the gap control, the ability to skate out of the zone with control. And I think that's something that Nate Schmidt does really well. At number 7 is Jared Spurgeon, and Jared Spurgeon's a really solid possession player on a Minnesota team that isn't really good in terms of controlling scoring chances, in terms of controlling shot attempts. Relative to his team, he's a good shot suppressor as well. He's a really small guy. I think he's listed at 5'9", but he skates really well. Really good battle level and compete level. He's elite at exiting the zone with control as well as denying the blue line for the other team. And I think he uses his skating to his advantage and his stick really well to do that. The best part of Spurgeon is that um, he's the best at limiting high danger chances, and he's actually the best at eliminating high danger chances in the entire NHL. So it's a fun fact. Number 6, not really a surprise on this list because he's been around for really a long time, but Zdeno Chara. And what hasn't been said about Zdeno Chara that hasn't been said already? His stick is just so long. He's so smart defensively. He's tough. He's been to play against. We saw that against Toronto where he kind of shut down him and McAvoy, kind of shut down Austin Matthews. And by the way, McAvoy I think is one of the best young defensemen in the NHL, but I think a lot of that has to do with Chara. And, he faced the 90th percentile quality of competition this season, so he is getting a lot of top lines, top players, elite players, and elite defense pairings. 98th percentile in Corsica against per 60 minutes, so he is suppressing shots very, very well. He's always been amazing at suppressing shots just because of how good his stick is, how tough he is to play up against in the defensive zone as his defensive IQ. And he's also in the 91st percentile for Corsi 4 per 60 minutes, so he really does drive play, and he's more of a two-way defenseman, but elite defensively. And obviously he logs a ton of minutes. He's lost his step. He isn't as quick as he used to be, but logging a ton of minutes, suppressing shots really well. Corsi against Corsi 4, he's generating shots. He's just an elite. Still think he's an elite defenseman. Still thinks he can play for maybe five more years. He just doesn't look like he has any sort of sign of slowing down. One thing that concerns me about him and why he's ranked 6 is his quality of teammates is very high, and he doesn't really receive that many defensive zone stars, as many as you would expect. He gets quite a bit of offensive zone stars, and that might have to do a little bit with sheltering McAvoy, but it also could do with the fact that he's amazing at generating offense, so why not? At number 5, probably the most prototypical defensive defenseman. When I say defensive defenseman, this guy probably pops into your head as Marc-Edouard Vlasic. So obviously he was underrated for a really long time, but he made Team Canada, I believe, in 2014, and he's really built up his reputation, especially since he received that massive contract with San Jose last season. And Vlasic, what else is there to say about him that hasn't been said already? He faces really tough competition. Obviously, 99th percentile of quality of competition. The only player that faced a higher degree of competition in the NHL last season was Ron Hainsey, and Ron Hainsey started off the season really well with Toronto last season and did not end really well just because of how grueling those minutes are playing against the top lines over and over and over again, night after night, and into the playoffs. So Marc-Edouard Vlasic, surprisingly elite penalty differential, the 92nd percentile, so he goes up against these really tough guys, tough matchups, and he doesn't really take that many penalties at all. In fact, he draws more penalties than he takes by quite a large margin. I think that's extremely impressive. I mean, penalty differential is key for me. When you're matching up against the top guys, you don't want to spend a lot of time in the penalty box. Really tough zone starts, 42% of his starts in the defensive zone, logs a ton of minutes, over 22 minutes in a game last season. Shout out to his partner Justin Braun, who also faces the 90th percentile of quality of competition. And that really allows a guy like Brent Burns to do what he does best offensively and get a lot of offensive zone starts and sheltered minutes. Gotten better offensively as well. He has shot assists in the 88th percentile, and shot assists are something we can talk about in a different video. However, they're really important to being a good offensive D-man. Number 4, I have Drew Doughty. A lot of people think that Drew Doughty is the best defenseman in the game. I respectfully disagree. I still think it's Erik Karlsson. However, Drew Doughty, obviously top 3, top 4 defenseman in the game, typically known as an all situations defenseman. I think Doughty is an elite as a matchup defenseman against the league's best. We all know he logs a ton of minutes going up against the top competition night in, night out. He boasts elite shot suppression numbers at 45% Corsi against amongst the league's best at exiting the zone with control and entering with control, and elite at denying zone entries. I believe he was 80th percentile in zone denials. Not the greatest, giving up high danger chances, but still an elite defenseman in multiple areas of the game, especially defensively. And just from watching him, he has really good gap control. He's highly competitive, plays with some grit, so that's always good to see, along with the good underlying numbers. But yeah, I do think he's slightly overrated defensively. I think he's a little bit better offensively than he is defensively, but the defensive numbers speak for themselves. He is definitely an elite defensive defenseman. Number 3, this guy's kind of been analytics darling for a really long time, is Mark Giordano. I seriously think he's been one of the most underrated defensemen of the past 5 seasons. I think he's been top 5, if not top 7-ish defenseman in the league over the past 5 seasons, especially once he came back to Calgary. He's been hard matched against the league's top competition. He drives results. He limits shots against. He was 7th in the NHL in high danger chances against per 60 minutes. He's elite at breakups per 60 minutes. However, he could be better at denying zone entry and entering the zone. And I don't think that that's going to improve too much, especially as his skating declines as he enters his mid to late 30s. However, one of the smartest defensemen in the NHL, highly competitive, a great leader, elite defensively, elite defensive mind, and his numbers really speak for themselves. So, number 2, I have Josh Morrisey. Number 2, I have Jacob Slavin and Brett Pesce. And one of the things that you can say about Jacob Slavin and Brett Pesce is it's really hard to separate them and find out which one's better than the other. I think Slavin's a little bit better than Pesce, at least offensively. However, these two spend so much of their time together, it's really hard to disseminate who is the better defensive player. And I really think that this is one of the best defensive pairs in the NHL over the past 2 or 3 seasons that both of them have really broken into the NHL. What makes them really good is they're both really good skaters. They're both really big boys. One of Brett Pesce, I believe, is 6'2", and Jacob Slavin 6'3". Hard defensive zone starts, hard matched up against top competition. Both have elite penalty differential, especially for the usage, 96th percentile for Pesce, 91st percentile for Slavin. Elite shot suppression, elite at denying the zone, elite at exiting the zone, elite at limiting high danger chances per 60 minutes. So all around, 2 of the best defensive defensemen in the NHL for me, and obviously they drive results every time they're on the ice, and they tilt the ice in your team's favor. So these 2 defensemen are definitely, and obviously the lefty-righty pairing. These 2 are just elite. I love them. I think that they're criminally underrated. That might have to do a little bit with playing in Carolina. But moving on to number 1, this shouldn't be too much of a surprise to anyone, especially if you follow analytics. However, number 1 on my list is Hampus Lindholm. And I don't think that in a Game 7, if I'm protecting a lead, there's no defenseman I want on the ice more than Hampus Lindholm. Excuse me. Hampus Lindholm has long time been an analytics darling. He faces really tough competition, 90th percentile, with Josh Manson, who is his partner. He suppresses shots really, really well. 45% Corsi against, elite at exiting the zone, elite at breakups per 60 minutes, elite at denying zone entries, good at denying high danger chances per 60 minutes, and just all around elite defenseman. I think he's elite offensively as well. The point totals really haven't followed, which is what makes him kind of underrated in terms of more of the casual fans. However, if you watch this guy for 5 minutes, you know how amazing he is. I think that he is what people think Ryan Suter is, where Ryan Suter has this reputation of being an elite defensive defenseman because, I don't know, maybe because of the NHL games, because I know he was always rated really high, like 92 for a long time. But Hampus Lindholm can go and play a lot of minutes for a very long time and deny chances from the opponent. I mean, look at his heat map. It's incredible. Hampus Lindholm is just, in my opinion, the best defensive defenseman in the game. And I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you find it a little bit informative. Hope you enjoyed the gameplay in the background, and I'll see you in the next video.